Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're all safe and as well as possible in these weird and wonderful times. What is freedom of speech? According to Amnesty International, UK, freedom of speech is the right to say whatever you like about whatever you like, wherever you like. Right? Wrong. Quote, freedom of speech is the right to seek, receive and impart information and ideas of all kinds by any means. Quote, freedom of speech and the right to freedom of expression applies to ideas of all kinds, including those that may be deeply offensive, but it comes with responsibilities, and we believe it can be legitimately restricted. When freedom of speech can be restricted. You might not expect us to say this, but in certain circumstances, free speech and freedom of expression can be restricted. Governments have an obligation to prohibit hate speech and incitement, and restrictions can also be justified if they protect specific public interest or the rights and reputations of others. Any restrictions on freedom of speech and freedom of expression must be set out in laws that must in turn be clear and concise so everyone can understand them. People imposing the restrictions, whether they are governments, employers or anyone else, must be able to demonstrate the need for them, and they must be proportionate. All of this has to be backed up by safeguards to stop the abuse of these restrictions and incorporate a proper appeals process. And when it can't, restrictions that do not comply with all these conditions violate freedom of expression. We consider people put in prison solely for exercising their right to free speech to be prisoners of conscience. Jabbar Savala was imprisoned after calling for protests against the government on Facebook. We consider him a prisoner of conscience and campaigned for his release. There is a link that you can read his story if you so wish, and I can put it in my description. Going back to the issue written by Amnesty International UK, checks and balances, specifics. Any restriction should be as specific as possible. It would be wrong to ban an entire website because of a problem with one page. National security and public order. These terms must be precisely defined in law to prevent them being used as excuse for excessive restrictions. Morals. This is a very subjective area, but any restrictions must not be based on a single traditional religion and must not discriminate against anyone living in a particular country. Rights and reputations of others. Public officials should tolerate more criticism than private individuals, so defamation laws that stop legitimate criticism of a government or public official violate the right to free speech. Blasphemy. Protecting abstract concepts, religious beliefs or other beliefs, or the sensibility of peoples that believe there is not grounds for restricting freedom of speech. Media and journalists. Journalists and bloggers face particular risks because of the work they do. Countries, therefore, have a responsibility to protect their right to freedom of speech. Restrictions on newspapers, TV stations, etc. can affect everyone's right to freedom of expression. Whistleblowers. Governments should never bring criminal proceedings against anyone who reveals information about human rights abuses. Rights and responsibilities. Free speech is one of our most important rights and one of the most misunderstood. Use your freedom of speech to speak out for those that are denied theirs, but use it responsibly. It is a powerful thing. And why, may you ask, have I just read out that rather long blurb about Amnesty International's views on freedom of speech, and freedom of expression? Because I like to establish, well, certainly as far as my own countries are concerned here in the UK, what it means. And I know that in every country on YouTube there are different laws about freedom of expression or freedom of speech. I'm not blind to that. But the problem that we face, and as we have seen with one particular case of the missing 5-year-old girl, who's now actually nearly 6, somewhere Wales, in Tennessee, is the increasing concern over mob mentality on social media. And the worrying part is, when does it become mob mentality? Well, I think we're already there, aren't we? To a certain degree. With this case, we have many creators who have been speculating, and some have done it with decency, facts and research, as I've said many, many times before. These are just my opinions, obviously, and my thoughts, so you can agree or disagree where you like. But regarding this case, and I'm using this case because we've had cases before. I won't mention the high-profile cases because it's been done over and over and over. But the one thing that one learns is whatever investigative work going on with the case is being done by TBI, FBI, etc. This case is complex, and for the decent people who care about what happened to Summer, these creators, quote, are just making me feel more sick each day. There's always going to be speculation, but the way these creators, quotes, are behaving, in my opinion, defies any decency, duty of care, of diligence. Nor do they care about due process. All we hear is, quotes, I have the freedom of speech. Sorry, I shall say that again. My breathing is bad today. All we hear is, quote, I have the freedom of speech, quote, but not allowing the facts, people involved to have the same. Just because they can say something doesn't mean they should. They have a responsibility to think before they speak, if they care, if they follow the law, due diligence, etc. Like many, I've been watching this case from day one. And whatever one thinks of Don and Candice Wells, etc., and we have seen some very interesting, shall I say, occurrences of them on social media. Whatever one thinks, at this point, they are people of interest, according to TBI. They have not been arrested for the disappearance of their daughter, Summer Moon Utah Wells. So whatever we think about, whatever we discuss, and we must do with responsibility, it is done with speculation and hearsay, often. Some of these creators have, in my opinion, whipped up this case and the drama as if it is a reality show. These are people's lives. Excuse me. It is, in my humble opinion, sheer mob mentality at its ultimate worst. Yes, I know, as I've said, that Don has called into YouTubers like Cher and others, for example, I'm only using them as an example. But facts matter and research matters. The hearsay, the mob mentality, the trial without any kind of court, judgment, jury, due process is becoming scarily off the scale. People need to stop enabling watching people who have not done their research, not done their facts, and are there and have actually been filmed saying it for the cash cow basis of the case. I really genuinely begin to think that someone is going to end up seriously hurt or worse, like many of you I know. Can you imagine one day if Summer does come home, please God, or her brothers watch all this one day on the internet when they're old enough, because the internet is forever, as we all keep saying. Can you imagine what they will think, what they will have to endure and perhaps relive by watching all of this going on? And it seems to me that the majority of these so-called creators do not care about that. And that is the key. The description of mob mentality occurs when people forget about their own beliefs and follow what everyone else is doing. A good example of mob mentality is in a book called The Lord of the Flies, and also in To Kill a Mockingbird, if anyone has read that. A setting with a dictator leadership and de-individuation in the people is when mob mentality is more likely to occur. Mob mentality, also called as herd mentality, describes how humans adopt behaviours, buy merchandise, and follow trends based on their circle of influence. It explains how one's point of view can be easily altered by those around them. The origin of superstition lies in mob mentality psychology as well. So, that might all sound like gobbledygook to many people. I hope not. But I guess the key message is we have to think about what we're all putting out there on the internet, the responsibility that we have, just because we have the freedoms to say certain things out loud, on paper, on social media, perhaps does not mean that we should. Perhaps it means that we should stop. If we have any concerns about the actions of people involved in a case, don't fire up a live. Report it to the right authorities, TBI, etc. It is a place I no longer wish to be. I've always been and always will be fascinated in true crime, whether it is going back hundreds of years or it is current. But this is too much. I'm not saying that as a coward or a weakling. I'm saying it from a place of strength and realization. And I no longer wish to enable any of these channels, even just by glancing at them. I admire what they call the clip channels and the people that do their research, and there are many. They aren't necessarily the bigger channels, they are the smaller channels. And with the good old algorithms of YouTube get missed, but they are there if you search hard enough. And you can go into any channel, any creator's channel, and watch, listen. You can engage or not, it's up to you. Because at the end of the day, we are adults, hopefully, mentally adults. Many of us are parents, aunties, uncles, sisters, brothers, who know children, etc., who have lost somebody to murder, to illness, etc. We need to do better. And I, for one, am not doing better by following the chaos anymore. They are treating people, some of these creators, and I think many of you know who I mean, as if we are school children who need to be put on the naughty step if we go anywhere else and are seen to even say hello. And it stops people expressing their opinion, their freedom of speech. So we're back round in a big loop here, aren't we? They are professing their freedom of speech, but they are not allowing others. And that is wrong. And the other thing is to remember that one day, unfortunately and tragically, Summer's siblings and family will see the chaos and the games played by some people here on the YouTube streets, as we call it. We owe them a responsibility and a duty of care. Seriously, we do. So I shall watch quietly and gather information quietly and hope and pray in my own way that I do, that Summer Moon Utah Wells is found, and whatever occurs, justice is done for her and for her brothers. That is what matters. So I shall now climb down off my speaker's corner, and if any of you are in the UK or London, you'll understand what I mean, because we have a place in London we call Speaker's Corner, where anyone can go and stand and speak. And that's what I'm doing figuratively on here. I'm expressing my thoughts, and I'm allowed those thoughts, and they are my opinions. Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Much love, Carrie Pink.